Good morning, and today we're going to be looking at the Framon DBM-1. I'm going to show you how to adjust this key machine. Let's start by loading the key into the all the way until death. We want to make sure that we have the proper thickness for the key that we're going to cut, and different safe deposit locks have different lever thicknesses, and those different lever thicknesses are changed by simply loosening the Allen head key and rotating it and finding the correct one. You want to make sure that you have the correct stylus in the correct position when you're calibrating the machine. And what I'm doing is just turning it by hand, and what you'll eventually hear is I'm turning it backwards as well. So I'm not turning it forwards in the cutting direction, I'm actually turning it backwards so that it doesn't grab too hard. So I can hear when it's grinding too much, and I can hear when it's not grinding at all. The next thing we're going to do is plug the machine in. If you're going to actually cut the key, and then you can bring the key into the cutter. And as you can see here, notice how that cut is not all the way across. It just barely kisses the key. That is the key of this whole thing, is to where it just barely kisses the key. In fact, when I'm rotating the cutter by hand, you should actually get it to a point where it engages, and you can hear it engage on some portions, and then it should actually stop, and you're actually feeling you're calibrating it to the point where it's the roundness of the wheel that you're hearing. No wheel is going to be 100% perfectly round. There's always going to be a high side and a low side, no matter if it's brand new cutter, brand new machine. You're going to have a high side and a low side. And now I'm calibrating to that fine last little bit of calibration. So you just turn the wheel. You can use the wire portion. The wires were kind of poking my hand, so I would suggest using gloves, or you can turn the cutter itself, but you want to make sure the machine is off and not plugged in while you're doing this portion of it. You want to unplug the machine, and then you just want it to barely kiss the key, and then you are calibrated correctly. Once you have it calibrated correctly, we can then take a key and put it into the side that has the stylus, again with the head of the key pointing towards the right, and the cutting portion of the key that's going to be fed into the cutter towards the left. Now, to line the key up properly, you're going to use the stylus itself and the cutter wheel itself. So you want to leave a little tip of the key outside of the jaw, and then actually physically run the key and the tip of the key. This is going to be a tip stop or a tip measured key cutter. So you're going to pull the key or run the key right into the cutter, and then leave the stylus side just a little bit loose, and then bring that key to where it's touching that stylus as well. Now we're actually cutting the key itself, and everything is going to be a straight plunge. This cutter will cut steel keys. These are brass keys, but it will cut steel keys because it has a carbide cutter. The carbide cutter allows you to cut the flat steel keys. If you try and cut steel keys with a high-speed steel cutter, it's going to damage the cutter. Carbide will cut steel. And if we use carbide to cut steel, then it will not damage the cutter. So then you just want to make sure that everything is straight. You have to plunge cut all of your cuts. Under no circumstances can you side cut. Any side load will possibly cause damage to your key, yourself, or the machine. Framon offers a 1-year manufacturer's warranty, and if you know Framon's reliability, you know that these are durable machines, and this machine will probably outlast you, the locksmith. It will probably last generations. Framon Manufacturing is known for building machines that last generations, and the machines usually outlast the locksmith. This is no exception. You can tell exactly how heavy duty this is, and you can just feel it. It's a ball bearing design that really is stout. And then here you can see that wheel. All you got to do is run the cut around the wheel until you find the correct size and thickness for your cut. And then you may need to do 2 plunge cuts with the cutter. If it's a thicker cut, the wheel is going to be as thin as the thinnest portion on the stylist, obviously, because it can't shrink down. So if you're cutting a safe deposit key that has a thicker opening or a thicker slot for thicker levers, you're going to have to make 2 cuts, 1 down each side. You're going to have to plunge cut each side. And so I just start at the bow of the key and continue towards the tip of the key and just keep plunge cutting, move over, plunge cut, move over, plunge cut, move over, plunge cut, and you keep doing that until you have the entire key cut out, and then I'll usually run it back as well. So I'll run it into the tip of the key, and then I'll run from the tip of the key back towards the bow, and just make sure that everything is very clean, very nice, smooth cuts, and make sure that there are no jagged edges, make sure there are no tips or no thin pieces of metal that did not get cut. You want to inspect your key and make sure that the key has all of the cuts cut to the proper depth. When you're done with this, if there is a problem, you can mic it. Here I'm explaining that you want it to be nice and straight. You cannot have any side-to-side movement. Everything needs to be a perfectly straight plunge cut. Once you're done with this, I usually test my cutter by actually cutting a key and then putting it directly into the lock and making sure that it works. If you have a key and a lock, that's a great way to test it and make sure that it works. Deburr that one side, the down cutting side, and then we should be able to stick this directly into our key, or I'm sorry, into our safe deposit lock, and you can see that all of the levers line up perfectly. So this is a perfectly cut key. Here's the original cut key. Everything worked flawlessly. Then we'll go ahead and just throw the guard key in there and actually operate the key. I'm showing that the gates all lined up at the area where the stump goes into the cuts, or the gates, and then the renter key works as well. Both the keys that I just cut and the keys that originally came with the lock. That's going to be your best test right there. If you'd like to get very technical and mic it out, you can do that as well, and you can tell if it's off by any fraction of an inch. However, the real test is, does it work with the lock? That's going to tell you whether your depth and your spacing is accurate and whether your cuts are accurate. So I'm going to cut another one. I don't like to do it on just one brand. I like to cut 2 different keys for 2 different brands. There are differences in lock tolerances, and you want to make sure that you have all of those tolerances figured out. So here again, I am checking the thickness and making sure that the stylist is operating properly. So we have the correct stylus thickness, and then we're just going to go ahead and start and plunge cut each one of those cuts, and always run back and forth through the key. I don't just make 1 pass, I make 2 passes, so that you can really ensure that you've got all of that material cut out of there. One tiny little burr can prevent this from working. For more information, check out Framon Manufacturing and ask your supplier about the DBM-1.